The ship's cold metal floor pressed against Princess Lyra's face. Once she had walked on floors made of crystal that sang when touched by royal feet. Now she lay chained like a beast, far from the gleaming spires of her home world. 3 days had passed since her capture. 3 days since General Dorn, her most trusted ally, had revealed himself as a traitor. His words still burned in her mind. "The time of kings and queens has ended, Princess. Your father's crimes cannot be forgiven." Lyra didn't disagree about her father. The old king had grown cruel in his later years. That's why she had joined the rebellion in secret. She had fed them information, helped them plan, dreamed of a fair new government where her people would have voices. But the rebellion had splintered. The moderate faction fell to extremists. And General Dorn, it seemed, had his own plans. Instead of placing her on a new council as promised, he had sold her to slavers from the Outer Rim. The price of a princess, it seemed, could buy many weapons. A boot struck her side. "Get up. Royal trash." The guard was a bulky creature with yellow eyes and skin like bark. Lyra didn't know his species. In her former life, she had studied 27 galactic cultures, but she had never bothered to learn about the lower worlds. Another failure. Lyra struggled to her feet, the chains around her wrists and ankles clinking. The worst restraint was the collar around her neck, a neural dampener that blocked her natural abilities. All those born to the royal line could manipulate energy fields, sense thoughts, and move objects with their minds. The collar reduced her to something less than whole. "The captain wants to see you," the guard said, yanking her chain. They moved through narrow corridors, past cells holding other captives. Most were political prisoners like her, beings who had fallen from power or ended up on the wrong side of a conflict. Some reached out as she passed, but most just stared with empty eyes. The captain's quarters were surprisingly clean compared to the rest of the ship. Captain Vex was a thin, tall being with silver skin that reflected the room's dim light. Unlike his crew, he wore a tailored uniform and spoke with refined tones. "Princess Lyra," he said, not looking up from his display screens, "I trust your accommodations are suitably humbling." Lyra straightened her back, calling on years of royal training. Even in rags, even in chains, she would not cower. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. Captain Vex smiled, showing teeth filed to points. "The pleasure markets of Nix 9 have paid handsomely for you. A royal pet is quite the novelty." Lyra had heard of Nix 9, a lawless moon where anything could be bought or sold, where beings were property, stripped of all rights. "My people will come for me," she said, though she knew it was a lie. Her people thought she was dead, killed in the rebellion's final attack. "Your people," Vex laughed, "are too busy killing each other to care about one lost princess." A sudden lurch threw them both off balance. The ship's lights flickered. "Captain," a voice shouted through the communication system, "we've hit some kind of energy field." Vex rushed to his control panel. "Impossible. There are no marked fields in this sector." Another violent shake. Warning alarms blared. "Engine failure. We're being pulled into a gravity well." The captain forgot about Lyra as he frantically worked his controls. Through the viewport, she saw something blue and green growing larger, a planet, unmarked on their charts. The ship pitched forward. Lyra fell hard against the wall, her chains tangling around her. Equipment broke loose, crashing around the cabin. A heavy case struck Captain Vex, knocking him unconscious. As the ship tumbled toward the unknown planet, Lyra felt something she hadn't felt since her capture: hope. If they crashed, there might be chaos. In chaos, there might be a chance to escape. She closed her eyes as the ship entered the atmosphere, flames licking at the hull. Whatever waited below couldn't be worse than what waited at Nix 9. Perhaps on this unknown world, she might find a way to remove her chains, both the metal ones and those that had bound her spirit. The ship screamed as it fell from the sky, carrying the fallen princess toward her uncertain future. Fire and metal screamed around Lyra as the ship tore through the atmosphere. The floor pitched wildly beneath her, sending her sliding across Captain Vex's quarters. With her hands still chained, she could barely grab onto anything to steady herself. A massive jolt threw her against the wall. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, but also did something unexpected. The captain's security keycard, which had fallen from his pocket during the chaos, slid within reach of her bound hands. Lyra didn't hesitate. Her fingers closed around the card just as another violent shake rattled the ship. Through the viewport, she could see trees rushing up to meet them. "Brace for impact," screamed a voice over the intercom. The ship hit the ground with a thunderous crash. Metal tore, systems exploded, and Lyra was thrown forward into darkness. When she opened her eyes, smoke filled her lungs. Pain radiated from her left side where a piece of metal had cut her. The captain lay nearby, not moving, blood pooling beneath his silver head. The emergency lights flickered, casting red shadows across the wreckage. Sounds of panic echoed through the ship. Screams, shouts, the hiss of broken pipes releasing steam. Lyra pulled herself up, wincing at the pain. She swiped the captain's keycard across her wrist restraints. Nothing happened. She tried again, desperate. On the third try, the lock clicked, and the cuffs fell away. Her ankles came next. The collar, however, wouldn't budge. The neural dampener required a special code, not just a keycard. Still, having her limbs free was better than nothing. She stepped over the captain's body and made her way into the corridor. The ship had broken into pieces during the crash. Where there had once been cells holding other prisoners, there was now only twisted metal open to the sky. Bodies lay everywhere, guards, crew members, and prisoners alike. Some moved weakly, others were still. The smell of blood mixed with leaking fuel and burning circuits. A guard appeared suddenly from a side passage, his yellow eyes wide with panic rather than cruelty now. "You," he snarled, reaching for her. Lyra grabbed a broken pipe from the floor and swung it with all her strength. The guard fell, clutching his head. She didn't wait to see if he would get up again. Making her way toward the breach in the hull, Lyra caught glimpses of the world outside. Trees taller than any she had seen before. A blue sky with white clouds. The air that rushed in was surprisingly sweet. As she neared the opening, she heard shouts from deeper in the ship. "Secure the merchandise. The tracking chips will lead recovery teams here soon." Slavers never abandoned valuable property. Even after a crash, their first thought was preserving their investment. Lyra reached the edge of the broken hull and looked down. The ship had plowed into a hillside, creating a deep furrow of dirt and broken trees. Beyond lay a forest stretching as far as she could see. She jumped, landing hard on soft earth. Pain shot through her ankle, but she forced herself to stand. The collar around her neck felt heavier than ever, a constant reminder of her captivity. Behind her, voices grew louder. They were organizing a search party. Lyra ran. Her royal upbringing had never prepared her for this, running barefoot through alien woods, bleeding and weak. Each step sent pain through her injured side. The collar chafed against her neck. The forest was both beautiful and terrifying. Sunlight filtered through leaves in patterns she had never seen before. Strange sounds came from all directions, chirps and calls that might be animals or might be something worse. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing beside a small stream. The water looked clear. Desperate with thirst, she drank deeply, not caring if it might be poisonous to her system. As she caught her breath, Lyra examined her surroundings. This planet wasn't on any chart she knew. The plants were green like many worlds, but their shapes were unfamiliar. The gravity felt slightly stronger than what she was used to. The air had more oxygen. Night would come soon. She could see the sun lowering through the trees. Without shelter, without weapons, without her natural abilities, how would she survive? A distant sound caught her attention. Mechanical, not natural. The slavers had started their search. Lyra forced herself to her feet again. She had escaped one prison only to find herself in another kind of trap. But for the first time in days, her fate was in her own hands. She would not waste this chance. Deeper into the forest she went, following the stream, hoping to find shelter before darkness fell completely. Behind her, the crashed ship burned like a beacon against the darkening sky. Jack Reed woke to the sound of thunder. But as he blinked sleep from his eyes and listened more carefully, he realized it wasn't thunder at all. The sound had been too sharp, too final, like something massive striking the earth. He pushed himself out of bed and grabbed his binoculars from the table. Through the cabin window, he could see a column of smoke rising above the trees about 2 miles to the east. Whatever had fallen from the sky was burning. Probably a small plane, he muttered to himself. 5 years as a park ranger in this remote wilderness had taught Jack to be self-sufficient. Before that, 8 years in the military had taught him how to handle emergencies. He dressed quickly, pulling on sturdy boots and a jacket. Into his backpack went a first aid kit, water bottles, rope, and flashlight. He grabbed his rifle last, not for any survivors, but for the mountain lions that roamed these parts. His radio crackled as he prepared to leave. "Reed, you there? Over. I'm here, Tom. You see that smoke? Over. Yeah. HQ says it's not on any flight path. Could be a meteor. Can you check it out? I'm 4 hours away at the South Station. Over. Already on my way. I'll report back. Over and out." The morning air was crisp as Jack started hiking toward the smoke. His dog, Max, a German Shepherd mix, trotted beside him. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No birds sang, no squirrels chattered. Even the insects seemed silent. Whatever had crashed had frightened the wildlife. After an hour of hiking, Jack smelled it, burning metal and something else, something chemical he couldn't identify. The trees thinned ahead, revealing the crash site. Jack stopped, stunned by what he saw. This was no airplane. The object was massive, at least the size of a commercial airliner, but shaped all wrong. Bulbous in some parts, angular in others. The metal gleamed with an iridescent quality unlike any material he'd seen before. One section had broken open, spilling strange objects onto the forest floor. "What the hell?" he whispered. Max growled beside him, the fur on his back standing up. Jack approached cautiously, rifle ready. As he got closer, he saw bodies, or what he thought were bodies. Some looked almost human, others were nothing like any creature he'd ever seen. He'd been in war zones, had seen the aftermath of bombings, but nothing had prepared him for this. This was a spacecraft, an alien spacecraft. Jack's training kicked in despite his shock. Check for survivors. Secure the area. Report back. He moved methodically around the crash site, keeping his distance from the still-burning sections. No movement, nothing alive. He should radio Tom, tell him what he'd found. But what exactly would he say? That aliens had crashed in their national park. A noise from the trees made him spin around, rifle raised. Max barked sharply. "Who's there?" Jack called. Silence answered him. Then another sound, something moving through the underbrush, heading away from him. "Stay," he ordered Max, and followed the sound. 50 yards from the crash, Jack found drops of blood on leaves. Not red blood, but a purplish liquid that seemed to shimmer slightly. A trail of broken branches showed where someone or something had fled. He followed the trail for nearly a mile until it led him to a small clearing. That's where he found her. At first glance, she looked human. A woman with pale skin and tangled black hair. But as he got closer, Jack noticed the differences. Her eyes were larger than any human's, violet in color with no visible pupils. The shape of her face was too perfect, the angles of her cheekbones too precise. She lay curled on her side, breathing shallowly. A metal collar encircled her neck, connected to broken chains. Blood, that strange purple blood, seeped from a wound in her side. When she heard his approach, her eyes snapped open. She tried to scramble away, terror plain on her face. "Easy," Jack said, lowering his rifle. "I'm not going to hurt you." The woman, the alien, watched him with those strange violet eyes. She spoke, but the words made no sense to him. The language was musical, with sounds he'd never heard before. Jack put down his weapon and slowly opened his pack, pulling out the first aid kit. He pantomimed cleaning her wound. She flinched when he moved closer but didn't run. As he knelt beside her, she suddenly grabbed his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong despite her weakened state. Up close, he could see faint patterns on her skin, like luminescent tattoos that seemed to move slightly when she breathed. She spoke again, slower this time, as if hoping he might understand. When he shook his head, she pointed at the sky, then at herself, then made a gesture like something falling. "Yeah," Jack said. "I know. You crashed. You're not from around here." For a moment, they just stared at each other, a human man and an alien woman, both equally shocked to be meeting the other. Then she collapsed, unconscious. Jack didn't hesitate. He put away his radio without calling in his discovery. Whatever had happened here, whatever she was, he couldn't leave her to die, and he certainly couldn't hand her over to authorities who would treat her as a lab specimen. Carefully, he lifted her in his arms and began the long walk back to his cabin. Lyra woke to the smell of something cooking. Her eyes fluttered open to an unfamiliar ceiling made of wooden beams. A blanket covered her body, and beneath it, she realized her wound had been bandaged. The pain remained, but duller now. She tried to sit up. The movement sent a wave of dizziness through her head. "Easy there," said a deep voice. The human from the forest approached, carrying a steaming bowl. He moved cautiously, as if afraid of frightening her. Close up, Lyra could study him better. He was tall, with broad shoulders and skin tanned by outdoor life. His hair was brown with hints of gray at the temples, and his face bore lines that spoke of both smiles and hardships. "You've been out for almost a day," he said, setting the bowl on a small table near the bed. Lyra touched the collar at her neck, making sure it was still there. Without it, she might have been able to read his thoughts, understand his language. With it, she was trapped in silence. The human pointed to himself. "Jack," he said clearly. Then he pointed at her, raising his eyebrows in question. "Lyra," she replied, touching her chest. "Lyra," he repeated, nodding. He mimed eating, then pointed to the bowl. The smell made her stomach growl. How long had it been since she'd eaten real food, not the nutrient paste they'd given prisoners? Jack helped her sit up against the pillows, then handed her the bowl. Inside was a thick liquid with pieces of vegetables and meat. She tasted it cautiously. It was simple but good, salty and warm. While she ate, Jack moved around the small cabin. It was a single room with a kitchen area, a table with 2 chairs, the bed she occupied, and various items hanging from the walls. Large windows showed trees outside. A fire burned in a stone hearth, providing warmth and light. A large animal lay by the fire, watching her with intelligent eyes. It wasn't like any creature she had seen before, covered in fur, with pointed ears and a long snout. Jack noticed her staring. "That's Max," he said. He made a gentle sound, and the animal, Max, came to him. Jack guided the creature toward Lyra, moving slowly. "He won't hurt you," Jack said, though he knew she couldn't understand his words. Lyra hesitantly reached out. The animal sniffed her hand, then allowed her to touch its head. The fur was soft. A strange feeling came over her. This simple contact with another living being, freely given without fear or force, was something she hadn't experienced since her capture. Jack returned to a workbench in the corner. He had been examining her chains, the ones that had connected to her collar. He held up one link, pointing to the strange metal, then shook his head. He was trying to understand the technology, Lyra realized, trying to help free her. Lyra set down her empty bowl and stood carefully. Her legs felt weak, but they supported her. She walked to where Jack worked and touched the collar around her neck, then made a cutting motion with her hand. Jack nodded, understanding. He picked up a tool, a simple metal cutter. and approached her. Lyra bent her head, exposing the collar's locking mechanism. Jack examined it carefully, then tried to cut through a section. The tool's blade snapped instantly. The collar was made of dendrite alloy, one of the strongest materials in the stellar dominion. No primitive tool could break it. Jack frowned and tried another tool with the same result. After the third attempt, he set his tools down with a sigh. "I'm sorry," he said, the meaning clear in any language. Lyra nodded. She hadn't expected success. The collar could only be removed with the proper code or by damaging the neural circuits inside, which might also damage her brain. A sudden noise outside made Jack tense. He moved quickly to the window, peering out. His expression changed, alarm replacing frustration. Lyra joined him at the window. In the distance, lights moved through the trees. Methodical, searching lights. The slavers. They had tracked her. Jack seemed to understand the danger. He moved with purpose now, gathering items into a backpack. He handed Lyra a jacket too large for her and gestured for her to put it on. Then he opened a small door in the floor, revealing a space beneath the cabin. He pointed to the hiding place, then to her. Lyra shook her head. She wouldn't hide while he faced danger because of her. Jack's expression grew stern. He pointed more firmly at the hidden space. A loud bang came from outside. Closer now. They were running out of time. Lyra realized he had a plan. Reluctantly, she climbed into the small space. Jack handed her a flashlight, then gave Max a command. "Stay quiet," Jack whispered, though she couldn't understand the words. As he closed the trapdoor, Lyra caught one last glimpse of his face. For a stranger from an unknown world, he was risking everything to protect her. In the darkness of her hiding place, with only an alien animal for company, Lyra felt something she had almost forgotten: trust. From her hiding place beneath the floor, Lyra heard heavy footsteps above. Max pressed against her side, his fur bristling. The animal seemed to understand the need for silence, making no sound as strangers entered Jack's cabin. "No one here," a harsh voice said in the trade language of the Outer Rim. Lyra recognized it as belonging to one of the ship's guards. "The beacon shows the property is nearby," another voice replied. Captain Vex had survived the crash. "Keep searching. These primitive structures can have hidden spaces." Lyra held her breath. Next to her was a small opening where she could see into the cabin through a crack in the floorboards. Jack stood with his back against the wall, a gun in his hands. Free slavers moved through his home, searching. Vex looked different now. His silver skin was burned on one side, and he moved with a limp. But his eyes were still cold and calculating as he picked up items, examining them, and setting them down. "Primitive technology," he muttered. "This whole planet is worthless except for the princess." Another slaver opened cabinets, throwing food and supplies onto the floor. Why not just burn this place? Smoke her out if she's hiding, and risk damaging valuable merchandise. Vex snapped. "The neural dampener is expensive. If it's damaged, the princess is worthless." Jack remained perfectly still as they ransacked his home. Lyra could see his face from her hiding spot, calm but alert, waiting for the right moment. One of the slavers approached the corner where the trapdoor was hidden beneath a small rug. Lyra's heart pounded. Max tensed beside her. Just then, Jack moved. In one smooth motion, he raised his gun and fired. The sound was deafening in the small cabin. The slaver nearest the trapdoor fell, crying out in a language Lyra didn't know. Chaos erupted. The other slavers drew weapons, energy pistols that glowed with blue light. Jack dove behind a table as it was flipped, providing cover as energy bolts burned holes in the wooden walls. "Take him alive," Vex shouted. "He might know where she is." Jack fired again, then rolled to a new position. A slaver screamed as the bullet found its mark. But Vex was faster, firing a stun blast that caught Jack in the shoulder. Jack's body jerked, his gun falling from his hand. Lyra couldn't watch anymore. Without thinking, She pushed against the trapdoor. It wouldn't budge. Something heavy had fallen on top of it during the fight. Max growled softly, then suddenly burst through the small viewing hole, widening it with his powerful body. The dog leaped into the cabin, snarling and attacking the nearest slaver. With the hole now larger, Lyra could squeeze through. She emerged behind Vex as he approached Jack, who lay stunned but conscious on the floor. Lyra grabbed a heavy iron cooking pot from the scattered kitchenware and swung with all her strength. The pot connected with Vex's head with a satisfying clang. The captain dropped to his knees, his energy pistol skittering across the floor. "You," he snarled, turning to face her. Lyra brought the pot down again, but Vex caught her wrist. His silver fingers dug into her skin painfully. "The collar may block your powers, princess," he hissed, "but you still belong to me." A gunshot rang out. Vex's grip loosened as his eyes widened in surprise. Behind him, Jack had recovered enough to grab his fallen weapon. Vex collapsed, purple blood pooling beneath him, the same color as Lyra's, she noted with grim satisfaction. Not all species were as different as they appeared. Max had pinned the remaining slaver, teeth bared at the alien's throat. The creature lay very still, afraid to move. Jack struggled to his feet, wincing as he moved his stunned arm. His eyes met Lyra's, a question in them. She pointed to the fallen slaver, then made a cutting motion across her throat. Jack shook his head. He approached the pinned slaver and said something in his language. Then he took restraints from his pack and bound the alien's hands and feet. Lyra understood. Jack wouldn't kill an enemy who could no longer fight. It was not the way of her people either. At least, not the way they had been before her father changed everything. Together, they dragged the bound slaver outside and secured him to a tree. Jack searched the bodies of Vex and the other fallen slaver, collecting their weapons and equipment. Among the items was a small device Lyra recognized, a tracker. She crushed it beneath her foot. Jack looked at the bodies, then at his ruined home. Sadness crossed his face briefly, but was quickly replaced by determination. He gathered supplies into his pack, then handed Lyra one of the energy pistols. Without words, they understood each other. It wasn't safe here anymore. There would be others coming. Maybe not today, but soon. They needed to move deeper into the wilderness, away from the crash site and the cabin. As they prepared to leave, Lyra placed a hand on Jack's injured shoulder. She wished she could heal him, could explain everything, could thank him properly. But for now, a touch would have to be enough. Jack nodded, understanding her gesture of gratitude. They stepped out into the forest together, fugitives now, the alien princess, the human ranger, and the loyal dog, bound together by circumstances none of them could have imagined. 3 days of hiking through rugged mountains had brought them to a place Jack called the Old Mines. The entrance was hidden behind thick vines and looked long abandoned. Jack led Lyra and Max inside, using his flashlight to guide them through dark tunnels that smelled of earth and minerals. "We should be safe here," Jack said, knowing she couldn't understand his words but speaking anyway. The main chamber was large enough to stand in, with several smaller passages branching off. Old wooden supports held up the ceiling. Jack set down his pack and began arranging their supplies. Lyra touched the walls, feeling a strange vibration. Something about this place was different. The collar around her neck seemed to hum slightly, responding to something in the rocks. She pointed to the walls, then to her collar, trying to communicate her discovery. Jack frowned, not understanding. He approached and placed his hand where she indicated. After a moment, his eyes widened. He could feel it too, a faint pulsing energy in the stone. He dug through his pack and pulled out a small device he'd taken from the slavers, some kind of scanner. He'd been trying to understand the alien technology, studying it in their quiet moments during their journey. The scanner lit up when he pointed it at the wall, readings flashing across its screen. Jack looked excited. He showed Lyra the readings, then pointed to her collar. A matching frequency. The minerals in these rocks resonated at the same frequency as her neural dampener. Jack grabbed his toolkit and began examining her collar more carefully than before. His fingers traced the seams of the metal, looking for weaknesses. When he found a small access panel, he used one of the slaver's tools to open it, revealing a complex circuit inside. Lyra held perfectly still. One wrong move could trigger the collar's defense mechanism, sending painful shocks through her body, or worse. Jack worked slowly, methodically. He compared the circuits to the scanner readings, making connections. He wasn't just a simple ranger, Lyra realized. He had knowledge of technology that went beyond what she'd expected from this primitive world. "I was a communications specialist," Jack explained, unaware that she couldn't understand him. "Fixed equipment in war zones. This is different, but some principles are the same." He connected a wire from the scanner to her collar. Red light flashed. Rejection. He tried again with a different configuration. Still red. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he tried a third time. Green light. The collar made a soft clicking sound. Jack looked up at Lyra, hope in his eyes. "I think I've bypassed the security. Now we need to boost the signal from the rocks." He gathered pieces of the mineral, placing them in a circle. In the center, he positioned the scanner, adjusting settings. Nothing happened. Frustrated, Jack sat back on his heels. They were missing something. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating. Even with the collar dampening her abilities, she could feel the energy in the rocks. It wasn't just similar to her collar, it was similar to her. She took Jack's hand and pressed it first to the rocks, then to her chest, trying to explain. Jack's eyes widened with understanding. "The rocks don't affect the collar. They affect you. They amplify something in you." He reconfigured his setup, this time placing Lyra in the center of the mineral circle. He adjusted the scanner to create feedback between her body and the collar. The sensation began slowly, a warmth spreading from Lyra's chest to her limbs. The collar grew hot against her skin. The metal patterns on her skin, nearly invisible before, began to glow faintly. Jack watched in amazement as Lyra's eyes brightened, the violet color deepening. The minerals around them pulsed with matching light. Suddenly, pain shot through Lyra's body. She gasped, falling to her knees. The collar was fighting back, sending shocks into her nervous system. Jack moved to stop the process, but Lyra held up her hand. Not yet. She could endure this pain if it meant freedom. The battle between her natural abilities and the technology meant to suppress them intensified. Light poured from her skin, filling the cave. Jack shielded his eyes, backing away. With a final surge of energy, Lyra reached up and gripped the collar with both hands. Power flowed through her fingers into the metal. The collar's circuits overloaded, unable to contain the energy it was designed to suppress. A loud crack echoed through the cave as the collar split in two, falling from her neck. For the first time in weeks, Lyra could breathe freely. The weight that had pressed down on her mind lifted. Her senses, dulled for so long, sharpened instantly. She could feel the energy of the planet around her, could sense Jack's thoughts, confusion, concern, and wonder. She stood slowly, her body glowing with soft light. Jack stared, awestruck by the transformation. When Lyra spoke, her voice had changed. Deeper, more resonant, carrying power that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Jack," she said in perfect English, the knowledge of his language taken directly from his mind. "You have freed me in more ways than you know." Jack's mouth fell open in shock. "You can talk now. You understand me." Lyra smiled, the glow of her skin slowly fading though her eyes remained bright. "I can do much more than that," she said, "and I believe we have slavers to deal with." Morning light filtered through the trees as Jack and Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing where her ship had crashed. In the weeks since her collar had been removed, much had changed. The wreckage had been cleared away, buried deep by Lyra's restored powers. No trace remained of the alien technology that had brought her to Earth. The last slaver ship left orbit yesterday, Lyra said, her eyes focused on the sky. They believe I died in the crash. Jack nodded, relief visible in his tired face. The final confrontation with the slavers had been brief but intense. With her powers restored, Lyra had simply walked into their camp, raised her hand, and disabled their weapons. Most had fled immediately, rushing back to their backup ship hidden in the mountains. Those who had tried to fight discovered what it meant to face a royal of the stellar dominion at full strength. No one had died. Lyra had made sure of that. But none would return either. The memory blocks she had placed in their minds would ensure Earth remained a mystery to them, a place of superstition and fear rather than a target. "What will you do now?" Jack asked, the question he had been avoiding for days finally spoken. Lyra turned to look at him. The alien quality of her appearance had not diminished with her recovered powers. If anything, it had grown more pronounced. Her skin now contained subtle patterns that shifted with her emotions, and her eyes held depths that reminded Jack she was not human, despite her human-like form. "My father still rules," she said softly. "My people still suffer. The rebellion that betrayed me was wrong in its methods, but right in its cause." Jack felt his heart sink. Of course she would return. A princess with responsibilities could not hide forever on a backwater planet, no matter how peaceful it might be. "I understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You need to go home." Max whined at his feet, as if the dog also understood what was happening. Lyra smiled, reaching out to touch Jack's face. The contact sent a warm tingle through his skin, a side effect of her energy that he had grown to cherish. "That's just it, Jack. I've been thinking about home, about what it really means." She looked around at the forest, the mountains in the distance, the clear blue sky. "My father's reign will end soon, with or without me. The rebellion grows stronger every day. If I return now, I would only become another piece in their power games, a symbol to be used rather than a person who can help." Her hand dropped from his face, and she walked a few steps away, considering her words carefully. "For the first time in my life, I've experienced freedom. Not the privileged existence of a royal who is still bound by duties and traditions, but true freedom. To choose, to live simply, to connect with a world and its people without the weight of a crown." Jack hardly dared to hope. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps my journey brought me here for a reason," Lyra said, turning back to him with a smile. "This planet is beautiful, Jack, full of life and potential, and it's completely unknown to the rest of the galaxy." She gestured to the sky. "Out there, empires rise and fall. Species war with each other over resources and power. But here, I found something different. I found you, a being who helped me without knowing what I was, who risked everything for a stranger." Jack felt warmth spread through his chest. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Lyra said firmly. "What you did was extraordinary, and it showed me a different path." She took his hands in hers. "Earth needs protection. It's only a matter of time before others find this world. When they do, your people will need someone who understands what's out there." "And that someone is you?" Jack asked. "If you'll have me," she replied simply. "I can't promise it will be easy. There may come a day when my people find me. There may come challenges we can't yet imagine. But I would rather face them here, with you, than return to a life of palace intrigue and false allies." Max barked, tail wagging as if giving his approval. Jack laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "My cabin's not exactly a palace," he said. "Might be a bit small for a princess. I was thinking we could rebuild it," Lyra said. "Together. Something new." As the sun climbed higher, they walked hand in hand back toward what remained of Jack's cabin. Neither knew exactly what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long while, both looked forward to tomorrow. That night, they sat outside under the stars. Lyra pointed to a distant cluster barely visible to Jack's human eyes. "That's where I came from," she said softly. "But this," she gestured to the earth beneath them, to Max sleeping nearby. to Jack beside her. "This is where I found myself." Jack squeezed her hand gently. The chained princess had found her freedom, and he had found something he'd stopped looking for long ago: hope. Above them, a shooting star traced a path across the night sky. Perhaps just a meteor, perhaps something more. Either way, they watched it together, ready for whatever might come next.